August 18, 1944, 22:10 hours, 320 feet beneath the South China Sea. Lieutenant Commander Henry Mason of the USS Rasher peered through the periscope into a night that promised blood. A massive Japanese convoy approached. 13 ships, the largest he had seen in months. Unaware that within minutes they would suffer the most catastrophic single night in Japanese naval transport history. Aboard the escort carrier Taiyo, Captain Shuichi Sugino scanned the horizon nervously. His convoy, designated HI-71, carried nearly 4,800 soldiers bound for the Philippines. Reinforcements Japan could no longer afford to lose. Since 1942, the Imperial Japanese merchant fleet had been hunted relentlessly by American submarines. The silent death. What began as scattered attacks had evolved into a systematic campaign of annihilation. By war's end, American submarines would sink 55% of Japan's entire merchant fleet, over 5.3 million tons of shipping, and more than 100,000 men would die at sea, many trapped in the dark holds of sinking transports. This silent war had begun the moment Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. While bombs fell on Hawaii, 29 U.S. submarines of the Asiatic Fleet lay in Philippine waters awaiting orders. Within hours, Admiral Thomas Hart gave the command that would shape the Pacific War. Unrestricted submarine warfare. Every Japanese ship was now a target. But America's undersea force was not ready. Its 55 fleet submarines carried torpedoes, the Mark 14, that were fundamentally broken. They ran too deep, their magnetic exploders misfired, and their contact detonators collapsed on impact. For 18 months, submariners fired duds, watching helplessly as targets escaped. 4 torpedoes hit. None exploded, Lieutenant Commander Lawson Ramage wrote bitterly. The clang of failure became known as the sound of betrayal. Early in the war, Japanese captains sailed with confidence. Their navy dismissed submarines as secondary threats, relics of fleet warfare, not commerce raiders. Japan entered the war with only 47 escort vessels compared to Britain's 400. Its depth charges detonated at 60 feet, while American submarines cruised at 300. Protecting merchant ships was seen as dishonorable, work unworthy of samurai. This cultural arrogance would cost them everything. By 1943, the Americans had fixed their torpedoes and unleashed vengeance. Admiral Charles Lockwood, defying orders, proved through his own tests that the Mark 14 ran too deep. Other captains fired torpedoes at cliffs to expose the contact fuse failures. Once corrected, the transformation was immediate. In 1942, submarines had sunk 180 Japanese merchantmen. By 1944, they were sinking that many every few months. Intelligence breakthroughs made the difference. Code-breaking operations, Magic and Ultra, revealed convoy routes, schedules, and even cargo manifests. American skippers could position their subs precisely along known paths, waiting in ambush. To the Japanese, the results felt supernatural. Convoys vanished into the sea without warning. Panic spread through the merchant marine. Officers begged for shore assignments. Sailors called the Luzon Strait Torpedo Alley, a graveyard for transports. In early 1943, USS Tarpon torpedoed the luxury liner Tatsuta Maru, once a Tokyo-San Francisco passenger ship. She sank in 90 seconds, killing over 900 aboard. Diaries washed ashore weeks later with frozen final entries. Radar contact. American submarine. Fear metastasized. Convoys grew larger, escorts tighter, yet losses only mounted. Japanese reports captured the hopelessness. The Americans wait at choke points, attack at night using radar, dive deep before we can retaliate. We are fighting an enemy we cannot see or hurt. And indeed, the Americans could see everything. By mid-1943, the U.S. Pacific Fleet had doubled its submarine strength. With 100 subs patrolling simultaneously, Every major route from Japan to the Dutch East Indies was covered. Every convoy was a gamble with death. The toll grew unbearable. Ships carrying prisoners of war and forced laborers, hell ships, went down by the dozens. Thousands of Allied POWs drowned, unmarked and unknown, because Japan refused to label its transports per Geneva Convention rules. Meanwhile, Japan's lifeline was hemorrhaging. By early 1944, the empire required nearly 6 million tons of shipping to sustain its war economy. Only 4 million remained. Losses exceeded construction. Even the most optimistic reports warned of collapse. In April 1944, the Taichi convoy disaster sealed the pattern. 4 U.S. submarines, Jack, Gurnard, Angler, and Gurnard again, sank transport after transport carrying 2 entire Japanese divisions. Over 4,000 troops died. Those who survived were unloaded on the wrong island. Their mission impossible. Japan's front lines were bleeding to death, one convoy at a time. Then came August 18, 1944. The HI-71 convoy steamed through darkness, unaware that 3 American submarines, Rasher, Redfish, and Spadefish, waited in the storm. At 22:10, Rasher fired. 2 torpedoes struck the tanker Teiyo Maru, loaded with gasoline. The explosion lit the sea like dawn. Mason fired again, 6 torpedoes, and hit the massive transport Teiyo Maru. Aboard were nearly 5,000 soldiers and hundreds of civilians. The ship sank in 4 minutes. 2,665 men died screaming in the flooded holds. Minutes later, Redfish found Taiyo. 2 torpedoes hit. Flames engulfed her flight deck, and she sank with 850 crew. Rasher turned again, hitting Awamaru and Noshiro Maru. At Oro 333, Spadefish struck Tamatsu Maru, carrying 4,155 troops. The ship capsized and vanished within minutes. Rescue ships found 2,000 bodies floating the next morning. In 5 hours, the entire convoy had been annihilated. 7 ships sunk. 8,500 men dead. Not one American casualty. It was a massacre that shattered what little confidence Japan's sailors still possessed. Rear Admiral Sato Masao later wrote, "We drop depth charges blindly, hoping for luck. Our escorts are helpless. Every convoy is a massacre waiting to happen." Japan had no radar capable of detecting American subs, no modern sonar, and no ships to spare. The best destroyers were tied to fleet actions. Escorts were obsolete trawlers. Submariners like Captain Kazushige Matsumura, one of the few survivors of later convoys, recalled the horror. "We waited for the sound of torpedoes. When you heard them, you had 20 seconds to decide. Jump or die below deck." Most never made it. By November 1944, another disaster struck. Convoy HI-81. American submarines, Queenfish, Pakuta, and Spadefish destroyed the escort carriers Akitsumaru and Shinyo and 3 massive troop ships, killing nearly 7,000 men. The survivors arrived in the Philippines without equipment, their divisions crippled before ever facing the enemy. Japan's generals finally admitted the truth. Submarine attacks have made reinforcement impossible. We cannot move oil, steel, or food. The empire is strangled. By year's end, Japan's merchant fleet had collapsed. Of 6.4 million tons before the war, barely 2 million remained. Oil stopped flowing. Aircraft sat grounded. Warships rusted in harbor. Civilians faced starvation. Submarines had achieved what bombing and invasion could not. The death of an empire from beneath the waves. The human cost defies imagination. Conservative estimates credit U.S. submarines with killing over 97,000 Japanese soldiers during transport sinkings, more than American ground forces killed in the entire Central Pacific campaign. Tens of thousands of sailors and forced laborers perished alongside them. Survivors described eternal nightmares, the sound of torpedoes striking steel, the ship rolling, screams swallowed by the sea. "Every night I hear them still," said Ensign Haruki Ito, who floated 18 hours after Mayasan Maru sank. The screams never stop. By early 1945, U.S. submarines faced a strange problem. Too few targets left to hunt. Some captains shelled Japanese trains with deck guns for lack of ships. Japan's factories starved for raw materials. Its fleet starved for oil. The Imperial Navy, once the pride of the Pacific, lay paralyzed in port. When Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945, only 1.5 million tons of shipping remained afloat, most damaged beyond use. The submariners who waged this campaign had paid dearly. 52 U.S. submarines lost, over 3,500 men dead, a 22% casualty rate, the highest of any American service. But their sacrifice had strangled an empire. Less than 2% of the U.S. Navy's tonnage had achieved strategic devastation beyond precedent. The reasons for this success were many: radar, intelligence, wolfpack tactics, superior training, and industrial might, but above all, relentless innovation. Every submarine carried radar years ahead of Japanese technology. Every patrol benefited from decoded Japanese signals. Every commander attacked with initiative. By contrast, Japan's doctrine, obsessed with glory in decisive battles, never adapted to a war of attrition. It lacked the ships, radar, and mindset for defense. By the time Japan understood, its sea lifeline was gone. The psychological scars ran deep. Survivors of Japanese convoys met decades later still haunted by invisible hunters. "For 40 years I dream of periscopes," said Captain Teishi Yamada. "We never saw the Americans, only the torpedoes, then the fire, then darkness." Another recalled oil-slicked seas and burning eyes. "We heard the screams fade as ships went down. Then silence." In 1995, Japan dedicated a memorial in Tokyo to its 60,000 lost merchant sailors, most victims of submarine attacks. The inscription reads, "They sailed into danger, knowing death awaited them." Beneath those words are thousands of names. The 4,455 dead of Tamatsu Maru, the 2,200 ein Portuaditsuf, 6 of Teiya Maru, the 3,437 of Mayasan Maru, and the 1,481 aboard Tatsuta Maru. And for every name carved in stone, 3 more were lost without record, swallowed whole by the silent death below. In the cold arithmetic of history, the U.S. submarine campaign against Japan remains unmatched. 314 merchant ships sunk, over 5.3 million tons destroyed, an empire starved and broken. It was victory from the depths, a war waged in silence, unseen but decisive. Beneath the waves, in the darkness where no glory shone, a handful of men strangled a nation built on the sea, and in doing so, ended its dream of conquest forever.